Good afternoon and welcome to the City of Sioux Falls City Council Minnehaha County Commission joint meeting. Today is Monday, April 18th, and I'd like to welcome you all here today. I'd like to start today's meeting with a roll call, a roll of the City Council, and then also the Minnehaha County Commission.
Council members Aguilar.
Here.
Anderson.
Here.
Brown.
Here.
Intiman.
Here.
Erpenbach.
Here.
Jamison. Karski.
Here.
Rolfing.
Minnehaha County Commission, we do have 6 people here in attendance, so we can do business.
Great. Call the Minnehaha County Commission to order.
Thank you very much. We'd like to start with today's meeting with a Pledge of Allegiance. If you could all stand, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. We would like to start with an approval of the agenda. If I could have a motion to approve today's regular agenda.
So moved, Brown.
It's been a motion by Councilor Brown, seconded by Councilor Anderson Jr. to approve today's regular agenda. Are there any changes that anyone would like to make? Any discussion? Very good. Could we have a vote on that, please?
Council members Aguilar.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
Intiman.
Yes.
Erpenbach.
Yes.
Karski.
Yes.
That is passed 6-0 of the City Council.
Same motion will be entertained by the county. Is there a
So
motion?
moved.
Thank you. Is there a second? Any further discussion? Seeing those, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you very much, Minnehaha County Commission. Item number 1.
A resolution advising and giving consent to the appointment of members to the Homeless Advisory Board.
Good afternoon, councilors and commissioners. Thanks for letting me come tonight. I have a resolution to put on here and then just kind of run through a little bit of the activities that the Homeless Advisory Board has been up to in the last year or so. So the first thing that we'd like to do is the resolution appointing 2 new board members today. Doug Morrison is one. He can't be here with us tonight, but Jesse Vavrick is the other, and he is in the audience. So there is a resolution advising and giving consent to the appointment of members to the Homeless Advisory Board. Be it resolved by the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and Minnehaha County that Doug Morrison and Jesse Vavrick would be added to the Homeless Advisory Board per the joint city-county agreement to be effective from May 2011 to April 2014.
Very good. City Council or Commission, any thoughts? Councilor Brown?
If there are no questions, I'll move approval.
Second, Erpenbach.
It's been a motion by Councilor Brown, seconded by Councilor Erpenbach on this particular resolution. Is there any further discussion or comments or questions? Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak to this item? Very good. Vote, please.
Council members Aguilar.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
Intiman.
Yes.
Erpenbach.
Yes.
Karski.
Yes.
That is passed 6-0 with the City Council.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Same motion from the county will be entertained.
Second.
There's a motion
Kelly.
and a second. Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimous.
Item 2.
Update on the City of Sioux Falls, Minnehaha County Homeless Advisory Board.
Thank you. I just kind of want to run through some of the stuff that we've been working on. Feel free to ask any questions at any time. It's kind of like a top 10 list, but a little shorter. The first thing that I just kind of want to touch base on is the fact that we worked really hard in the initial efforts to get Safe Home off the ground. And part of that was my doing research and grant writing to try and find funding sources and to make sure that we were creating a valid program. As you know, the groundbreaking has happened, the city has put through some money, and the county has gone forward and is taking on the responsibility of that facility. So it's a pretty exciting thing. The Homeless Advisory Board obviously has no financial aspects in that, but as an opportunity to do the right thing and house our chronically homeless in this community, this is a fabulous step forward. So that's one of the items. part of my time is spent serving on various community boards, so, and there are several members who also spend time working on and serving on boards that serve the poor, the homeless in this community. So just that. Working really hard on making sure that people are aware of the problems in this community. Sioux Falls is a fabulous, beautiful city, but we also have an underlying level where people are in need. And so being able to track some of that data, research, work with other agencies to be able to find that information. So I have a plethora of data in my laptop at your disposal whenever you might need it. I'd be happy to get that for you. It's also on our website, so should you need that. And I also make it a habit to go out and present to various agencies on homelessness, various groups in the community, faith-based members, so that we're trying really hard to bring awareness to the issue, because we know that without political will, without the support of the community, people living in poverty who are working full-time cannot afford places to live in this community. And so until we all work together and are showing our collaborative strength, we really aren't going to be able to solve the problems that we were designed to come together for. So I'm grateful for the efforts. We had some significant issues with trying to figure out what to do with our homeless population this winter. I'm grateful to the Salvation Army for stepping up and having their warming site. They served on average 42 individuals the months that they were open. That's a significant number of people who are not able to be housed at the St. Francis House or the Union Gospel Mission. So when we look at solutions in this community, we talk about housing. We need to make sure that we're looking at whether we need an additional shelter in this community. And before we start a fire there, we just want to make sure that we're looking at all of our options and making sure that we're not duplicating any services, so that if there is a need, that need is being met the best way possible. We spent a significant amount of time last year working with our at-risk population of youth. We know that they are also something that's not very well recognized in the community. As the economy gets tighter, kids kind of get thrown out, and that might be a harsh thing to say, but they're pretty expensive. And we have 14, 15, 16-year-old kids in this community whose parents have asked them to leave. So we, with a collaborative effort with staff from Volunteers of America, the Homeless Advisory Board, CASA, the school district, worked to track down some of our at-risk youth and put some data together. Last year we interviewed 154 of them. This year we're going to do that again, starting actually next week, and we're hoping to track down some of that data. It's a lot of questions, so we try to provide incentives to the youth to do the questionnaires with us. It's also pretty personal stuff that we're asking them to share with us, but hopefully, as in the results from this one, the information was used to put together the 2012 United Way initiative that will kick off in July. So we're very excited that that information went to some good use. It's also being used through VOA and stuff for some of the grants that they're doing. So the information's vital, and the kids have been really good sports about being honest, and we appreciate that. But we also know that we have a long way to go in serving the needs of our youth in this community. The homeless count we do every year. You can see it on the news. Last September we did one, and in January we also did one, and that data comes from the state. We submit all the information. We have not gotten the numbers back from the January count, but the one we did in September showed us that we had 631 individuals who were homeless that one day in September. It's one day count, so if we don't see them coming in or out of an agency, or we can't find them on the streets when we go out that night, we're not able to count them. So it could be an accurate number, but it's more likely that it's an undercount just because people try to avoid agencies where counts are happening. Of that number, 183 of those were children. So we know that we have issues that we still need to deal with. One of my pride and joys that I really can't take a whole lot of credit for, other than the fact that I administer it to the 14 agencies that participate, is the Pass It On program. The city provides 40,000 free one-ride passes every year, and I distribute those to 14 agencies who agree to follow the rules. Last year, 8,435 individuals were able to get to work, to get to their doctor's appointments, and other various important meetings that they needed to get to because of those passes. And I think that's a pretty significant number. Of those 40,000 passes, 38% of those 40,000 passes, 38,500 of those were all utilized. So it's a pretty good turnaround. We're about a 96% effective rate with being able to use those passes and making sure that the people who do get them are using them. And then last year in February, we did our Summit to End Family Homelessness. We had 74 people come together and spend an entire day working on solutions to ending homelessness in the community. Of those, from that entire day, what we were able to put together was the fact that we had 3 priorities we wanted to focus on: affordable housing, transportation, and then education and workforce development. So groups came forward from that, and we've been working diligently trying to find solutions. From that summit, our big one that we've really been spending a lot of time on solely in the last 8 months is a housing trust fund. And I know there's been talk out there about what a housing trust fund is, and I'm not here today to kind of go into all the details on that because we have a whole rollout plan that we'd like to put into play. But we know that there's 45 states out there that already have some form of a housing trust fund. South Dakota does not have any version, not a local, not a state. And we know that it's a really solid solution to finding ways to meet the needs for affordable housing, especially for people who are in that 30 to 50% of area median income. We have a lot of housing in this community that's 50% of area median income and above. And for people who might not know, our area median income for a family of 4 in Sioux Falls is $69,100. So that means a family has to be earning at least $35,000 to be able to qualify for most of the affordable housing we have out there. What happens to our families that are earning minimum wage full-time, which means they're earning about $16,000 a year? We need to look at solutions for that, and that's part of what the Housing Trust Fund can do. We have, in 2 weeks, a national expert coming to talk to us, and we're very excited about that. These are where we're focused on for the 2011 agenda. We are looking at adding new members, which you guys just did for me today. Establishing that housing trust fund. It's going to take a lot of effort, and obviously it's going to take some dollars. So our first is to get really well educated on it, make sure what we know, what we want to do, and make sure that we understand before we try and present it to other people in the community. Greater awareness and community involvement. We have all kinds of things going on. We have that youth assessment next week. We have our Consumer Advisory Board training. We're actually trying to get people who have experienced homelessness or who live in poverty more involved in finding solutions for their needs. We have national trainers coming actually on Wednesday and Thursday this week to meet with people. We're working with the VA to try and find solutions for our homeless veterans. And we are focusing on emergency housing options. So if we need to build a shelter, we need to make sure that we have the data to back that up and solutions that would actually provide ways to do that. And just so you guys know, I'm sure you've all seen it, but the top 5 unmet needs that came through the 211 this year included transportation, rent and mortgage assistance, and then for the first time ever, emergency housing options. So I think that speaks volumes to the fact that we have some gaps in the community that we still need to address. And I'll just like to leave you with this. On March 24th, we spent an entire 4 hours working with people. We had 115 people show up and spend a month in poverty. Those weeks were 15 minutes long, but they were very painful for people because they had to experience on a tiny, tiny budget, and they had to go from agency to agency, and they were relying on public transportation. We were at the Salvation Army Gym, and these are just some of the quotes that I asked them to fill out comment cards, and I just took some of the most poignant ones from those comments. But value systems change quickly. Kids get neglected. It's mentally exhausting and stressful. When we were talking about living in poverty and going from paycheck to paycheck and not knowing if you're going to be able to pay the rent, if you're going to be able to get food, it's interesting that people picked up on this in just an hour of their time. Everything took so long. What things children are exposed to, such as illegal activity, violence, instability daily, how much work goes into being poor, how limited by transportation you are. I think it was a very eye-opening experience for the 115 people who participated. I got to play the role of a banker that day, as well as facilitate the event. So it was kind of fun, if you want to look at it that way, to show people the realistic things that happen when you don't have your ID, when you don't have transportation. We couldn't help them. And so then they had to go back to the beginning and start over again. So the overall feedback on that was really good. And what we'd like to do is, of course, keep that momentum flowing and see where we can go and make Sioux Falls even stronger in working with its low-income families. That's all I have. If you have any questions or anything I can help.
Stacy, great job. Thanks for the passion. Commissioners or councilors, any comments at all? Yes, Councilor Anderson Jr.
Stacy, I guess the one thing that really pointed out to me was the number of homeless children, and especially the teenagers. It's something that was brought to my attention earlier this year. How are these kids surviving out there on the street? Are they living with friends, just bouncing around from couch to couch?
That's exactly right. That's what the majority of them are doing. Couch surfing is what we call it, and you kind of just go from one place to another trying to find a spot where you're not going to get kicked out. Lots of times girlfriends move in with boyfriends' families or vice versa, which is, of course, not a very healthy relationship, and we don't want to do anything to incentivize people becoming pregnant, but we all know that programs work better when you have babies, and so we need to find ways in this community and across the country to make it so that if you stay single and you go to college, that we'd rather reward that than if you have a baby. Lots of issues. Sometimes teenagers have cars, so they're living in their cars, kind of floating around. We've seen kids. Kids are pretty open about stuff if you build a relationship with them, and we have people like Nicole Berger, who did street outreach for 12 years. She's a fabulous advocate for our youth. Just being able to connect them with resources. With that homeless survey or that assessment that we're doing, we put together a youth resource guide so that it specifically works on issues that they might be experiencing. And so trying to connect them and also know that this isn't just data we're collecting to put it in a laptop. It's because we want to be able to find programs that serve their needs.
And what have you seen over the last couple of years as far as the rise in numbers? How is it really increasing?
For our youth, or
for the youth? I want to concentrate on that at this point.
If you want to talk just our youth in general, with the numbers counted through the school district, with that August to May count that we do, that number's been pretty consistent. Last year it was 1,034. Right now we're at about 1,000 for the school district for homeless kids that have been identified. So pretty consistent, probably up a little bit. Year before it was about 900, so it just consistently stays in that pretty high, scary range. Our unaccompanied youth is an unknown because they kind of just couch surf and they don't tell. You can ask. They won't get free meals at school because they don't want to be classified or identified. So it's a very tricky population to count, but we know that they're out there. And like I said, that one day count, we counted 183 homeless youth on one day. So it's a staggering number when you look at the overall population, but it's also a very workable number, which is probably the one thing that we can pride ourselves on, is we know we have the ability to meet the needs of that small population. It's not Los Angeles where you're dealing with 80,000 or New York, but we still have to figure out ways that we can do it.
Thank you.
Commissioner Barth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just know as a member of the HAB that there are many organizations that attend our meetings and contribute immensely to efforts in this area. But I just want to take a minute to thank the city administration and the city council for their support in the group. And certainly it's great to have new members coming on that can contribute.
Well, thank you very much, Stacy. On behalf of the city and the county, we certainly appreciate your efforts.
Thank you.
Item 3.
Siouxland Heritage Museum Special Enterprise Fund 2010 report.
Well, good evening. I always enjoy getting the opportunity to talk to the City Council as well as the County Commission. Tonight I'm here to give you an annual report on the Museum Special Enterprise Fund. It was established in the fall of 1995 through a joint a joint resolution between the City Council and Minnehaha County, and we began operating that fund in 1996. That resolution was updated in 2000, and the Enterprise Fund receives revenues and accounts for expenses associated with the rental of space in the museum system, sponsorships, and the provision of programs, events, and services for which a fee is charged. The fund budget is determined annually at the joint budget hearing. We submit a budget annually for the fund, and it includes our projected revenues and what we expect to spend correspondingly. The fund interacts with our museum's operations budget, particularly in the area of human resources. Because of the way the rentals are operated at the old courthouse museum, we have both full and part-time staff who will work a rental event. Then they're paid, that shows up as an expense in our operations budget, and when we receive the rental fee from the organization in the enterprise fund, that amount is reimbursed to the operations budget. The other area in terms of human resources, we have 2 staff positions, our museum events coordinator and our exhibits assistant, for whom 1/4 of their salary and their benefits are paid for by the enterprise fund. The fund is administered, as all our budgets are, by Minnehaha County, and the revenues that are in excess of expenses are basically retained for future use of the museum system. Now, in the past, we have used some of those funds to buy a van for our education staff when they're going out. Or a number of years ago, we replaced one of the long-term exhibits at the Pettigrew Home and Museum and paid for the entire cost out of the enterprise fund. And that was part of celebrating the city's sesquicentennial in 2006. To date, over the years, since the creation of the enterprise fund, our receipts have been $1,205,000. Our expenses just under $1,100,000. So those are expenses for operating the museum system that haven't been on the taxpayers' back. In 2010, the fund income was $130,000. Our expenses $120,000, and we currently, as of the 31st of December, had a fund balance of $107,000 in the enterprise fund. Whoops, too hard here. So what do we use the fund for? Basically for educational programming, some exhibits, artifact conservation and restoration, rentals, and some other special projects. And in the course of doing this, we have some miscellaneous expenses such as sales tax that we have to pay. But an example of our programming, our concert series. This is free to the public. We do 26 concerts a year, half of them in the summer out behind the old courthouse museum in the plaza, half of them in the circuit courtroom during the winter months. Those are free to the public. We pay for the concerts through sponsorships from different individuals. Program like the Victorian Girls' Tea. This is a program that really builds upon, if you've ever heard of the American Girl dolls, they have programs. It's a way of getting kids interested in our Victorian house, the Pettigrew Home and Museum. And this is a program that we run through the Enterprise Fund at the Pettigrew. It also gives us the ability to be creative in some of our programming. This last fall, we worked with Mount Pleasant Cemetery to create the Ghosts and Graves Tour, where people got to walk through the cemetery and meet some of the historic characters from Sioux Falls past. In exhibits, we received a sponsorship of $10,000 from the Daughters of the American Revolution to help pay for our Vietnam exhibit that opened here on February 25th. And I would invite, if you haven't been to see it, it's a great exhibit. It's going to be up at the Old Courthouse Museum for a while. We also do, we have some exhibits that were designed as traveling exhibits, and we do rent those out to other smaller museums throughout the state, and we've done that several times in the last year. And we also produce exhibitions on contract for other organizations. Sometimes it's display cases which we produced for the Richfield Historical Society as an example in the last year. Rentals are one of our bigger expenses in the enterprise fund. It both generates income and costs us money, but it does bring in about 5,000 people last year that probably or may not have come into the building otherwise. Weddings are our largest part of our rental business. Around 60% of the rentals have to do with either a wedding or a wedding reception. There were some significant changes in the fund and how it operates in 2010. In 2009, the state auditor came back to the county auditor and made a recommendation that revenues that the museum receives from its museum's endowment, we have an endowment of about $750,000 that's managed by the Sioux Falls Area Community Foundation, and we can receive about 4% distribution a year up to. But those funds and funds we receive from the museum's Alliance, which is a 501c3 private nonprofit friends group, had been going into a grants account, and instead the auditor recommended that instead of having this grants account on the side, that all that revenue be funneled through the enterprise fund, and that began in 2010. Those funds, however, they come with specific tags for specific projects, like conserving a painting of R.F. Pettigrew. So it's made life a little more complicated and yet in many ways simpler. The enterprise fund is a significant part of our funding picture. In 2010, actual expenses, it paid for 9% of our program. Of course, I can't thank you and the taxpayers of Minnehaha County and Sioux Falls enough for their continued support of the museum system. But the enterprise fund is one of our attempts at really lessening the burden of operating the museum system. That's my presentation for this evening. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them.
Bill, thank you very much. Let's see if the council or the commission does. Very good, Bill. Thanks so much for your leadership. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, city councilors or county commissioners, if there are no further topics, could I have a motion to adjourn, please?
Move to adjourn, Entenmann.
I got a motion by Councilor Anderson Jr. It was seconded by...
Second.
Oh, very good. Councilor Entenmann. Thank you so much. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, vote please of the council.
Council members Aguilar,
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
Entenmann.
Yes.
Erpenbach.
Yes.
Karski.
Yes.
That is passed 6-0.
Move adjournment, Mr. Chairman.
Been a motion and a second, 2 seconds. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes unanimously.
Minnehaha County Commission and Sioux Falls City Council, I thank you for your efforts. This meeting is adjourned.